So thanks again for being here. We're glad to have you. Talk to me.
Yeah, we are so excited. We are celebrating the Vios Kind Body Fertility Unfiltered Single Mom by Choice Journey. And it's April 26, 2022, Tuesday of National Infertility Awareness Week. And we are very, very pleased and honored to have you join us. I am Angie Beltsos, the CEO Clinical of Kind Body. Very excited as a reproductive endocrinologist to wave the flag of fertility awareness, infertility, and really happy to be here with you. We have an amazing panel of people that are going to join us tonight, and I'm going to hand the mic off to my partner, Dr. Toral Parikh. Toral, are you there?
I am there. I'm unmuted now. Sorry. Hi, everyone. I'm Toral Parikh. I am the REI doctor for Washington, D.C. currently, and I'm very excited to join you all tonight so that we can talk a little bit about single parenting. It's nice to meet you all.
I like that y'all, Toral. Where are you
from?
I
know it's a Texas thing. It's the draw. I can't get rid of it.
I love it. It's amazing. And we have really the honor and privilege to have a couple of our patients who are so strong and dynamic and really, I think the tenacity to do this and to be here with us. We have Kristina. Hi, Kristina.
Hi. So glad to be here. I'm Kristina. Kind Body IUI patient in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Hey, Kristina from Minneapolis. We love having you here. Thank you for joining us. And we have my friend, Tiffani. Hey, Tiffani.
Hi, Dr. Beltsos. Hi, everyone. I'm Tiffani. I am a IVF patient from Chicago.
Thank you for joining us, everybody. We're so pleased. I want to welcome everyone to Kind Body. And when you think about what you do, who you believe in, what you believe in, I think you have to reflect on your why. And at Kind Body and at Vios, we so believe in building families to make this idea of reproductive health and fertility care not only accessible to the people that are here with us today, but for all the people in the United States and frankly, around the world, their ability to accomplish what they are dreaming of, and that is to have a family. So we are here to serve our patients, and also in Kind Body, it has this double advantage. One is to take care of our patients, and two is to provide access to care through employer benefits. And so we're really, really proud of our organization. What we do here at Kind Body and at Vios, we are here to help people with their reproductive health and to help them get pregnant now or in the future. And we can do that through all kinds of ways. Whatever you need, we're here to support you. And today we're going to talk a little bit more about single mothers by choice. We also offer GYN care and the different things that reproductive endocrinology includes, like PCOS and other conditions. And finally, we want to support patients not only through this medical process, but emotionally as well, and all the different elements, this puzzle pieces that come together to provide a holistic approach to care. So, Toral, I'll hand the mic off to you.
So at Kind Body, it's really important for us, and what makes us as providers, what's really important is when our patients share their stories with us. It's kind of what drives us as physicians, is to hear how you felt going through your journey, learning about how we can normalize what may not feel so normal to you and help make that important first step to move forward. We're really excited to share some of our stories from our patients, like we mentioned earlier. And so I'm going to hand off the mic to Kristina, who's going to share with us her journey using IUI.
All right. Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Kristina in Minneapolis. I'm a health coach, doula, herbalist, and placenta encapsulation here. And I'm a mom of a 6.5-year-old. And so I guess that my journey into IUI and this whole space kind of started after having him and knowing that I did want to have another child. And for years, just knowing that that's what I wanted, but not being partnered and not having, a spouse or anything like that. I just kept thinking, how am I going to do this? I was putting all of this energy into finding a partner for some reason. I'm not a very traditional person, but for some reason, I still held that as the only way to kind of have a family. So it was after years of really knowing that this is what I wanted. Last summer actually is really where I had, I guess it's more of like a moment of clarity or like an aha moment where I just kind of stopped and realized, like, why am I putting all of this power, all this control of this thing that I really want? I want to build my family. I want to have another child. Why am I putting all of that control into the hands of someone I haven't even met yet, someone I don't even know? And once I said that out loud and thought about it, I just realized for me how silly that was to give control over to someone like that when I'm usually such the person of like, I want something, I'm going for it. And so that's when I really started to dive into research and of course getting on Google and like, where do I even start with this? What options are even out there? I'm versed in, the birth world as a doula and things like that, but the fertility world was a whole nother language to me. And so I felt pretty lost and was a little bit overwhelmed of like, where do I even begin? And so I had seen just on Instagram some announcements that Kindbody was going to be opening a clinic in Minneapolis. And so that was kind of at the back of my mind. And then last fall, when I started, calling around and making appointments, I was reminded of that. And at that point had, an appointment at another fertility clinic in town, but it was going to be months of waiting before I could get in. And then saw that Kindbody had opened and called and was able to get in right away for a fertility assessment, and was super excited about that because at that point I didn't have any indication, like one way or another, if this was even going to be an option for me. I had no idea what the status of my ovaries or anything was like at that time. So getting in for a fertility assessment was really awesome. And from the second I walked in, I mean, not only is it like aesthetically the most beautiful space I've ever been in, but just from like the reception all the way through, it was just such a positive experience, and the most patient-centered experience I've ever had in a medical setting. So it felt really good to be there. I felt really safe and trusted to be there. And so I met with Dr. Henny in Minneapolis and went through, I probably had like 6 pages of questions of like, well, what do I do? Where do I go? And she was so patient with me and answering all of that and going through in great detail all of my options. And after doing, the physical exam and some blood work, I, was told that I, would be a good candidate for IUI. And even before going into that, having done some of my own research, that was kind of the route I was hoping to be able to take. And at that point, it was like, okay, what do we do next? Like, where do we go? And so after finding out that that would be an option and that I could do that unmedicated or do an unmedicated cycle, I decided to move forward with that. So next steps for me was to decide on a sperm donor. And, Kindbody works with all of the major cryobanks in the country. And so I just started the hunt there and tried to decide, what some of my big factors were going to be for choosing a donor and what was most important to me. And big things really that it came down to was, one, choosing a donor that was open to sharing their contact information when the child was 18. That was important to me in case my child wanted to know that information later on. And then also just blood work. So the DNA testing and just lining up, making sure we're compatible and that I wasn't putting a fetus in any like direct known harm or things that I could avoid genetically. So when it came down to those two factors, I had just one donor left in my pool of what I was deciding on. So I knew that was my person, and got everything ordered and set up. And then with Kindbody, I did opt to do the Ovidril shot. So a shot that I took to, engage ovulation so that it was easier to decide when to actually do the IUI procedure. And I decided on that with my first round because I wanted to give myself the best chance possible that first time around, just, knowing the financial side of everything and not knowing if I would, get pregnant the first round of IUI or not. And yeah, I guess my story with Kindbody kind of ends after that because I had one round of IUI with Kindbody and got pregnant that first time. And I'm a little over 16 weeks now, due in October. And yeah, I'm over the moon excited about that. I don't think I've cried so hard when Monica at the office called me and I was like, I haven't looked at the results yet. I'm too nervous, but it was so overwhelming and so exciting to have a team in an office that was also so excited for you. And it felt just really special. So now I've transferred my care to a birth center, and just single parent wise, I'm starting to line up support for birth, with the birth doula, postpartum doula care, and things like that, just to make sure that, because with my son, postpartum was really difficult. And so I'm hoping now that I know this time around, okay, I do need help, and I do need support, and just finding those avenues that I feel safe with that support around me, and finding people that can help us, especially in those early days as we're figuring everything out and all those very sleepless nights. So yeah, I guess that's kind of the long and short of it, and I'll hand it back over so Tiffani can share her story.
That's amazing. And now we have Tiffani. Hi, Tiffani. How are you?
I am good. How are you?
Thank you for joining us.
Of course. So I will begin my story. Again, Tiffani, I am from Chicago. A little bit of background to kind of bring you along on this journey with me is that I am the stereotypical, in the best ways, Black Baptist child upbringing. And so I am the product of two-parent home. My grandparents were married 50 years. My sister got married when she was 23. I was at the wedding. And the whole time I'm just thinking that life will happen for me the same way it happened for my sister, my mom, my grandma. You'll be at church, you'll meet your husband, and you'll live happily ever after. That didn't work for me. That's not kind of how my life went. And so I had a plan of getting an education, start my career, get married at 27, have babies by 30, and life would be grand. I had a couple of long-term relationships, a 7-year relationship in my 20s, sitting around waiting for the ring when I realized that it wasn't a great relationship. And so I was really in it for marriage and not because it was the right partner for me. So I ended that. I had a 2-year relationship in my early 30s when we started to talk about marriage, and he revealed that he did not want children. So that was a deal breaker for me because I've always, more than being a wife, dreamt of being a mom, specifically mom to a little girl. And then my friends like to remind me now that it was around this age, around 32, where I started to joke that forget a man, I don't need a husband, I'll just go and have my baby by myself. I was kind of just joking because I surely still, I wanted a partner. I still do want a partner, but that wasn't, viable to me. And I knew I wanted to be a mother more. But at 33, my world kind of fell apart. My father passed away from cancer just 7.5 weeks after diagnosis. So there wasn't a lot of time to really kind of wrap your head around what was happening. You go from being admitted into the hospital to all of a sudden dad's kind of gone. And then 4-5 weeks after that, I got laid off from my job. So 2015 was a rough year, and dating and all of that was the furthest thing from my mind. I was trying to take care of myself, grieve, heal, take care of my mom, who had just lost her partner of 40 years, and then quite frankly, rebuild my career. So I wasn't thinking about dating. I wasn't thinking about motherhood. I was just trying to survive for a good while there. Luckily, things went well. Me and mom are healed, good. Dad's birthday was this weekend, so we had a dinner to celebrate. And then I got a good job. I got a job at Google. And I'm sure a lot of you are familiar that they have fantastic fertility benefits. So I was really blessed in that regard that I had a employer that paid for a lot of what I am going through right now. And so I look up, I'm 38, I'm single, no partner, but I have this blessing of this benefit through my employer. And so I started to really think about, am I going to do this? And then I decided to be brave, like I was with my career and with everything else. I even got a little tattoo that said "Be brave" to remind myself when I'm feeling sad or scared. And I decided to move forward with it. So I talked to my therapist about it. I prayed about it personally. I talked to my family, specifically my mom and my sister. I had to understand that being so traditional Baptist, that not everyone was going to agree with my decision to do this, but I knew if I had my mom and my sister on board that I could get through anything. And so I got them on board. They said, absolutely, go do it. You may not have a partner right now. That doesn't mean you won't have a partner later, but either way, you're not in this alone. We have your back and we'll be here for you and the baby. I have wonderful friends who are this child. When she gets here, we'll have a horde of aunties and uncles. And so I started to research REs in the Chicagoland area, Northwestern, all of that. But I had some concerns. So I am not a small woman. I am definitely mid-sized and curvy. And I'd read articles about some doctors discriminating against certain BMIs. And so I was concerned about that. There's always the concern about Black maternal health. And so I started to ask some friends that I know that had gone through the journey, what doctor did they trust? All of them weren't women of color, but I was definitely asking my curvier friends, and Dr. Beltzos came up. And so I researched her, researched the practice, and then that's who I chose to go with. And I joined Cryos. Everyone is fantastic. My mom has come with me to a couple of appointments, and she was like, these people, do you all hang out on the weekends? They were like, hi, Tiffany, hi, Tiffany. So going there is not scary at all. It's really wonderful. And I feel very much taken care of. So they guided me through everything. I'd always make jokes about my eggs that probably turned to dust, or they're in my ovaries, like on walkers and oxygen support. But those fears were allayed. Everything was fine in there, and it started to guide me through it. The next big hurdle, I'd already kind of been sold on IVF. So that's kind of what I went in wanting to do. Dr. Beltzos agreed it was a pretty viable option for me. And so after all the testing was over, here comes the big decision of picking a donor. It's quite surreal to start to think about. You're like, I online shop all the time, but I'm online shopping for materials, as I take to call them. And so it was really important to me that the donor be a person of color, hopefully Black. I am CMV negative, which I feel like most people aren't. So I had to have a donor that was also CMV negative. And so when you whittle down by African American and then CMV status, I wasn't left with that many options. I did choose to go to the California Chiral Bank. They have a lot of DNA testing. There's like, you can read writings by the donors, you can listen to their voice, you can get staff impressions of them. And so we chose a donor, went through the genetic testing, and then began my IVF journey. I did a round of egg retrievals. Everything is CMV, and I'm sure I'm gonna let a doctor explain what that is. I'm sorry if I wasn't supposed to bring it up. But I went through a round of egg retrievals. Everything went great, lots of eggs. Got my embryos, viable girl embryos, which I am prioritizing. I'm not discarding my boy embryos. And then we got over to the transfer process, and my body wasn't quite responding to the medication. Like, I had taken so well to the stimulation piece, but not the transfer piece. And I was starting to get a little bit stressed out about it. And Dr. Belsos was like, let's take a look, there's something else going on. And she found something else was going on. I had to have some fibroids removed. So it may seem like my journey is much longer than Kristina's, but there was a surgery in the middle of it and some recovery time. So my story with Vios is still ongoing. We just finished another egg retrieval. I'm going to do another one, and then we're going to try to transfer again. And I'm very much looking forward to maybe joining this panel again next year and having a story like Kristina's.
Wow. I'm totally speechless because the stories that you guys have both kind of given are so uplifting, they're encouraging. So from everyone here, I'm sure everyone wants to say it, but thank you for sharing your really intimate details of your journeys throughout the process, both with fertility success, as well as with the hope of obtaining fertility success or pregnancy. What we as physicians hope to do best is to prepare patients with the most amount of information and knowledge regarding their own bodies at an individual level, so that our patients can have the options available that's best suited for them. That's the most important. And so a lot of our process initially is doing lab work and ultrasounds and trying to figure out what status or ovarian reserve does a patient have and what options are available to them based on those testing results. Next slide. So how does that evaluation process sort of start? What does it look like? What are the steps? Step one is a consultation with a fertility specialist, someone like Dr. Beltos or myself, where we just sit down and have a chat. That's all it is. It's just a little chat to get an understanding of what have you done so far? What are you intending to doing? What are your goals long-term? Do you intend to have one child or do you intend to have 5 children? Regardless of whatever your goals are, a lot of the options counseling will be based around that. And then looking at your test results with your ovarian testing, which includes an ultrasound and the blood work, and determining what's best for you. Genetic testing is something that we do consider on a patient-by-patient basis to determine whether or not there's any concern for possibly carrying down certain mutations to the next generation. And then CMV testing, like Tiffani had mentioned earlier, is a virus that some individuals may be exposed to as a child. Usually it's associated with a cough and a cold. But this virus could theoretically or possibly be transferred in the donor sperm that you use. And for that reason, we test patients to ensure that they're negative or positive, and then subsequently transfer sperm that is in line with them. So if you are testing CMV positive, then we can transfer either a negative or a positive individual's sperm to you. After that, we do a basic check of the uterus, like Tiffany had mentioned. We're looking for fibroids or anything that may prevent or hinder our ability to move forward, and a fallopian tube check just to make sure the tubes are nice and patent or open. And so that way the sperm and the egg have the optimal chance of meeting one another. Going through all of the treatment options, we kind of sit down and discuss what are you wanting to do and what is a absolute no-go. And but based on that, we'll determine what next steps we take. So in the process of undergoing single parenting, there is the discussion of what donor sperm do I use and how do I do that? And I usually tell my patients, pick a nice day where you're at home, grab a little glass of wine, look online, select all the things that you may or may not desire in your sperm donor, but don't be too selective because it does narrow down your ability to choose, your sperm specimen. And that's to some patients that may actually help them to select which donor they use, and to others, they want more variety. We talk about timeline. So we pick out, what month is it that you're wanting to conceive in, figure out the logistics. Financially, we go over the options and put you in contact with the resources that Kindbody provides to our patients to determine how can we make this possible for you. And then we go over any legal considerations. We have patients that come to us from all ends of life. And so based on what donor sperm they're using, if they're using a known donor versus an unknown or anonymous donor, legal considerations will have to be considered based on that. And then going over the process of getting started. So at the last thing that we have patients also consider in the process just before getting started is a therapy session. That session is just so that we as providers feel that we have done everything possible to ensure that our donors have all of their questions answered and the maximum number of resources and support systems available in order to succeed in their desires to become a single parent. And so in that session, the therapist will discuss with you questions like, when are you going to tell your child that this was how they were conceived? Are you going to tell them? Or what's the best way of telling them? And are you going to let other people know? Who really needs to know? And allows you to prepare yourself to be able to answer all of those questions that you think to yourself, and ability to sort of form your story and to be able to handle the situations if they become difficult. So the two treatment options that are available when going through becoming a single parent is donor sperm using either IUI, like Kristina had mentioned, or IVF, like Tiffani has undergone. And so both options are based upon that fertility testing that we do and what method of conceiving the patient is desiring. And so when we choose to defer to IUI, but when needed or when an individual has infertility benefits and desires to potentially freeze for future options of having future children that are still genetically related to one another, then IVF becomes a better option to consider. And so we're going to walk you through the options of that.
Absolutely. And Dr. Beltzos, can we turn things over to you to walk through the details, please?
Thanks. So we've got, next slide. There are choices of selecting a sperm donor. Anonymous sperm donation is one consideration, using an agency. And the other option is what we call a directed donor, who might be someone you know. And they cannot be related to you, but they could be someone who is a friend, a known donor. And although there are some medical criteria, again, blood type, which if your blood type is negative, it's good to pick a negative donor. The cytomegalovirus, which is the virus that causes kind of a flu-like symptoms. You would get a blood test and see if you've ever been exposed. And the third is your genetic carrier screening. Those are the medical criteria. And aside from that, based on eye color, hair color, ethnic background, religion, whatever is important to you. But again, there's no textbook per se, but you have to find someone medically that is a good fit and someone who resonates with you to help find the right donor. And that's something that will help you and guide you with. Next slide. There are different sperm banks in the United States. These are a few of the ones that we are utilizing and that are reputable. So you would take the information we've given you through your testing and find a donor. Once you've identified the donor, we will double check that they're a good medical match for you and make sure that those criteria fit. And then you would order sperm and have it sent to the lab where you're going to do your care. Next slide. Again, just things to think about as you select a donor. You might think about things that are important to you in regards to their physical makeup, as well as their personal interests. You can read also some interesting personal stories about what resonates with them and see if that is a match. One of my patients was an artist, and for her, it was just important for someone to have a love of the arts. And I can appreciate that as well as you kind of contemplate different possibilities and thinking about who in your life would this donor resemble. Next slide. And then this one is for Toral.
So when considering donor sperm IUI, Kristina had mentioned earlier that there are two options. We can either use your natural cycle, where typically most women will have one follicle or one egg that dominates and becomes mature and is ready to potentially fertilize using the donor sperm IUI. Or the alternate option is to do something called ovarian stimulation, whereby we as physicians will decide whether or not you will take oral medication or injectable medications or both in order to stimulate your ovaries to produce more than one follicle or one egg during a single cycle. And the goal for the ovarian stimulation is to produce more than one egg, with the hope that one of the 2 or 3 eggs that we stimulate will be normal and lead to then a normal singleton fertilized embryo that will then lead to a singleton pregnancy. Occasionally we do too good of a job, is how I usually explain it to my patients, and we end up having multiple gestations occur from these medications. But that risk is overall quite low, and we try to ensure that it's low by doing ultrasounds during your stimulation cycle to ensure that the medications have not worked too well. Things that determine whether or not we plan to do a natural cycle or to use medications is largely age and the ovarian reserve testing that I had mentioned earlier. And this will kind of guide us as to what options are best for you. It's a decision that we make together, and one that may take a couple cycles to be able to succeed with, or may occur in the first cycle.
And IVF remains a very strong option for patients. Things to think about for IVF is that, you know, these are opportunities for us to help you optimize your success. And with IVF, you can also bank embryos, so you have more embryos for baby number 2 or 3. And you can test embryos for things like Down syndrome, miscarriage, but also you can know that if they are healthy embryos with PGT. So with that, I think the way it works is that you take medications for about 2 weeks. When the eggs are ready, we take the eggs out, fertilize them in the dish with the sperm, let the baby embryo grow. And when the embryo is ready, you can either put the embryo back in the uterus, you can freeze the embryo so your body has a moment to just become more calm and zen, or third is doing genetic testing of embryos.
So what we want you as patients to know is that kind body clinics are rapidly growing and located in multiple states throughout the country. And so we encourage you to look for a kind body clinic closest to you and hope that you might join us in your fertility and allow us to be a part of your team and your support system in order to achieve your goals of single parenting.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Tiffani, Kristina, Toril, and Angie. We really appreciate you sharing and just beautiful stories. And just want to shout out and thank everyone who's participating for your kind words and support, and also your terrific questions. So thank you, everyone. We've gotten a lot of questions in already. Please feel free to continue to drop your questions in the chat box. We will get to as many as we possibly can. And I'm going to try to group a few of them together to cover as much as we can. So to start off with, I think a similar question that we had in from a couple of groups is what are the parental rights of a donor in this case, and what sort of agreements or expectations could you expect to have to decide or go through? So probably Kristina, Tiffani, maybe you guys can each take that.
Sure. Yeah. I went through Fairfax Cryobank, and yeah, my understanding, although I don't totally remember the giant contract that I signed with them, but it just, in short, I think it was, there was two big differences between kind of the donors as far as if they choose to remain anonymous. So that's for a lifetime they remain anonymous, or donors that, once the child reaches the age of 18, Fairfax will release that contact information to you, and up to your discretion if you want to reach out to that person to make a connection. And so I did opt for that one, just in case that's something my child wants down the road. But there's no contact between them. There's no financial relationship between the donor and myself. There's no physical contact. There's no emailing anything before then. So they are truly anonymous until and if ever, the child decides to reach out at that point. So yeah, I guess that's what I know of that.
Thank you.
I used California Cryobank for the first round, and it's very similar, where some donors choose to, make that available at 18 and some don't. My donor selection was so slim because I was prioritizing Black donors and I'm also CMV negative, that I treated that as a nice to have versus a mandatory. And so the donor that I went with, that was not an option, but everything else in terms of family history, medical, how our genetics lined up, made him the right choice.
Great. Thank you both. And I think this is maybe a good question for our doctors, in that you addressed the therapist part of the journey and that step in the journey. Is there an additional wait time? One of our participants mentioned she's heard about a wait time of maybe 6 months. Is that a standard part of the process? Is that something that you're familiar with, or perhaps maybe not in our cases?
So your question is whether or not if a donor gives sperm, they have to wait 6 months to provide the sample, to clarify the question, Erin?
Yes, I think either, I believe that is the question there. And if
Yeah,
you've asked that question and we're interpreting it incorrectly, please
yeah.
pop that in the chat.
So, yeah, so this is an important question, is that there are different recommendations from different parts of the fertility world. Some of them are based on the FDA, the government, and some of them are based on ASRM guidelines, which is the American Society of Reproductive Medicine. If you have a donor who they can provide a sample of sperm. They'll be checked for sexually transmitted diseases and verified with the FDA laboratory that they're okay to provide a sample that you can use to have your babies. That quarantine period can last from no time up to 6 months. And different interpretations of the recommendations can help guide that.
And also just to add and clarify, like when it comes to therapy specific clearance, there's no known wait time following that therapy clearance that you need to wait prior to the IUI or IVF cycle that you're undergoing. There may be state dependent differences in that, but from an overall perspective, there's no wait time from the therapy session.
Thank you for that. We have a question about, if I've already frozen eggs, how easy is it to move eggs from one facility to another?
So typically there are usually local and then national transport mechanisms. Most commonly, the national transport mechanism using a company like Cryoport can be used to transport genetic material, such as embryos or eggs or sperm from one location to another. A lot of the times these cryobanks that we've mentioned will use such systems or their own system to transport gametes from one location to the other.
And we're developing our own kind body tissue transport team, which we have also at BIOS, that helps move things, because people, right, Toril, are moving around. Sometimes you get a new job, you go to a new. And so it's quite simple to move eggs, embryos, or sperm if you are moving, your location.
Exactly.
Great. Thank you very, very much. The next question is around age. So what is the cutoff age to do ovarian stimulation? And similarly, there was a question about, is 45 an age at which IVF with your own eggs is no longer available? So I'll throw that out to either one of the physicians. Do one of you want to take the first pass at the age question?
We definitely have some options for age. As women age, we're not as fertile as we used to be, and the eggs age with us. So at 40, the ability to conceive is somewhere around that 30%. As we hit 45, it drops to less than 5%. And we allow people to proceed with fertility care at 45 and want to manage our expectations. And if by chance the eggs are not healthy, Toril, you and I also have at our resources the options for egg donor or embryo donor. And embryo donation is where the egg and sperm have already been put together and you accept an embryo from someone, so people can adopt a baby. And in this case, it's an embryo that is put into the uterus that's already been created versus egg donation. So that opens that whole question too, right, Toril, for the question of age. But I think we want to make sure that you have an opportunity to try with your eggs, even if you have reached the age of 40 and above, to be able to at least try with your eggs, if that makes sense, based on your egg reserve, your age, and your antral follicle count, which is the ultrasound of your ovaries.
Yeah. And to add to that, Angie, like, a lot of the determining factors for whether or not to use your own eggs versus donor eggs or donor embryo when the age is above 40 or even closer to 45 is largely based on what benefits you may have, what financial resources you may have, and then also the success rates associated with each. Using your own eggs versus using a donor egg, the success rates for pregnancy will vary between the two. And so those things can help to sort of guide whether a patient chooses one versus the other.
Wonderful. Thank you both. So our next question is about the donor. And is there a limit to the amount of families each donor is available to? As an example, could my child have many donor siblings? Maybe Kristina, would you jump in? I see your head nodding.
Sure. I mean, I guess I don't know all the specific details, but short answer is yes. And I think each cryobank is different as far as their limits or how many vials or samples they give out to families. But short answer is yes. Your child could have a lot of siblings across the country. And that was a conversation that came up within the therapy session as well, which was super beneficial and something I hadn't thought about either of well, what does that conversation look like with other siblings? Not only do they have this, donor that they've never met and this elusive thing, but they could also have a whole slew of siblings out there. And especially with technology like 23andMe and everything, they could have access to their other family members, by the time they're in high school, probably. So yes, that is absolutely a possibility, I guess, depending on how much that donor, how many vials that donor is selling. So.
Thank you for that, Kristina.
Another thing to kind of add on to that is that certain donors only provide a certain number of vials and then may become future donors. So the actual cryobanks can contact donors and ask them whether or not they would be willing to donate again if they have not met that limit, because not all donor IU or donor sperm specimens will lead to a pregnancy.
And there are some guidelines. The American Society of Reproductive Medicine would like 10 births per population of 800,000. And so they use certain criteria so that there aren't too many children born from that same donor for a variety of reasons, including consanguinity.
Thank you. So we had an early question about the, after I have created embryos, should I consider freezing some additional eggs as sort of insurance in the event that I do meet someone? It sounds like in this particular case, there's a genetic condition, and so she's looking to plan in advance for siblings. So I think, yeah, go ahead.
I would say absolutely. Egg freezing is always welcomed when you're considering possible single parenting, in the event that you do meet someone in the future and that individual is interested in having children with you and you are in a place where you would like to have another child. It does afford you the option of using those eggs and turning it into a embryo that is mutual between you and your partner. And once you freeze embryos, those embryos will forever remain the genetics of you and the donor you've reused. And so that does offer that opportunity.
Great. Thank you for that. And I think this will be our last question before we wrap things up for the evening. If age is a consideration, would you recommend surrogacy? And then follow up to that, does Kindbody have resources for surrogacy?
Surrogacy is definitely a consideration. Toral, what do you think?
I was actually going to let you take that one, Angie.
So, sometimes we look at the egg, sometimes we're looking at the sperm, and sometimes there are issues with the uterus. So if we find, for a variety of reasons, it could be a medical condition, it could be age, and it could be how the uterus is reacting to some of the medications, a gestational carrier or a surrogate is a consideration. And it is absolutely available. We do work with an amazing group of agencies, and we're also at Kindbody bringing our own, team together to help you find the right way. And if gestational carrier is needed, we'll be here to help guide you through that. And as a doctor, as a mom, and a mom from someone who needed a gestational carrier, which is me, I know, as I'm going to put my patient hat on, that those are options. And I think what we want to leave you today with is that there are so many things that the fertility treatment world can offer you. Do not give up. There are many ways to become a mom. And I want to applaud Kristina and Tiffani for being here with us. We love you guys. You're amazing. And you're an inspiration to me as a doctor, me as a woman, as a mom, and also to our audience. We want to thank you for telling your story and just really grateful to know you.
100%. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for these incredible questions. If we did not get to every one of your questions, and I know we weren't able to capture everyone, you can please DM us on Instagram. The handle is @kindbody, and we'll be glad to try and help get your questions answered that way as well. So thank you very, very much for being here. And Dr. Parikh, can I turn things over to you to wrap us up with our special offer?
Sure. We would like to thank everyone who's in this video and offer you all the opportunity to come see us and to consult with us. If you do use the code Fertility Unfiltered 22, you will be offered $100 off your first visit. And that's just our way of saying, we want you to come see us to just understand where you're at in your fertility journey so that we can help prepare you the best way possible for your future.
Fantastic. Thank you again, everyone. We hope you have a wonderful evening. And once again, thanks to our fantastic speakers, Tiffani and Kristina in particular. Could not have had this event without you. Thank you so much for sharing. We're honored you always spend time with us, and we hope you have a wonderful night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.